So, Ndade Esimatla.
Oh, thank you very much. And good morning, all my other colleagues. Colleagues who've been talking here have a number of things that I would want to talk about. Yes, I want to hint to start with the fact that we are all born with a lot of potential for high achievement. And what the youth of 1976 were fighting against is what impact the long-term repression of apartheid had, the effect it had on us or on them. And the impact that repression is intended to have is to lock that potential that we have, that people have. And so the challenge now of youth and ourselves today is to unlock that potential, because now we have tools and processes for unlocking that potential. And yes, it has to be used a lot in schools, but even in families and everywhere. One of the things that what Tammy said was that we need a holistic approach. And what we have developed is what I call the holistic integrated learning approach, which would be used by everybody, learners, teachers, and even the rest of society. What this does is long-term repression and excessive fear constrains blood and energy away from the higher thinking brain, and it redirects it to the primitive brain that is only concerned about protection, self-protection, and and the rest. And it redirects it to the muscles so that we can be ready for action. But to be able to respond to our challenges that have been raised here, like challenges of the uh, triple challenge, poverty, unemployment of youth, unemployment and inequality, they need us to be thinking more than what long-term repression has denied us. And there's a program that we have developed over the years, over the past 14 years, which we have used with a lot of groups and even with individual learners to very amazing results. Now, the good thing is that as we talk now, the program has been shared as a chapter with one book that is intended to help uh, second language uh, teachers and learners of science, so that we don't have to, as Samuel said, so that we don't have to lower the pass rates, the stage to improve the performances of teachers and learners. So to say much further, because what I've done is I've provided a paper that maybe talks to greater detail, even though it is not a full detail of what I've just been talking about. So there is a program, there are processes that are intended or that actually unlock this potential, that help to unlock our ability to use even our technical skills. Because currently the education that we have mostly addresses less than 10% of the capacity of the human brain. And we want the programs will increase this to much more than that, to close to 100. And as I indicated, these will enable.
Leonora, just a quick one before we round up.
Yes, Mr. Ngobo, I'm still on the call. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. Earlier, the chair, when he started, he said that we need to come up with new ways of unleashing the potential of the youth. And I'm very interested on the definitive next steps in terms of what is the SAREC organization going to do about these gaps and challenges that the youth are currently experiencing.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. I think our CEO is going to touch on that before we close, and he's prepared something for us. CEO, I think that will go to you. Thank you, Leonora, for the question. Jamela, just a short one. Jamela, the screen is yours.
Thank you, MC. I want to be short. I want to acknowledge all the inputs that have been made, which most of which, of course, I agree with, and some are debatable as we try to put some interventions in place in the condition of youth in our country. But one thing that I wanted to say was that CIRAG, by virtue of its name, gave some of us some hope that we might just be able to address the elephant in the room. But I wanted to say, as an organization, and some of us who are interested in really participating in the activities of the organization, one of the things that we should not underplay is the power of consciousness. A lot of many problems that we have, sometimes we address the symptoms. I'm glad colleagues talks about colonialism, the Eurocentric curriculum. What are these things doing to the identity of our children and to their outlook in life? Because now they have been given a Eurocentric standard that doesn't fit into how as African children and youth should live. So for me, it's like we really need to be also address the issue of consciousness. I had a colleague who used to say, Gembela apartheid is kubaze ingqondo. And that you can see that sometimes we can be our own enemy when we allow the state to squander public funds. What is the impact of that? When we allow high levels of youth unemployment, what is the impact of that in our GDP? Because we are obviously not using our human capital optimally. So these things are complex and intertwined. No one entity can address it itself, but CIRAG as this body who wants to see to try and help the country. My input would be, let us also address the issue of the mindset.
There, Sam, quick one coming back to you. 10 seconds, 15 seconds most.
Thanks, Chair. I'm going to be very brief. Look, I just want to touch on the issue of youth unemployment and bullying in school. So earlier on, I mentioned this program that we run of mind training to assist learners to achieve distinctions. So this program so much interlinked with the youth unemployment to address that issue. To be honest with you, you know very well this. I mean, if you look at the schools that are there in South Africa, there is no way that we can have capacity to really, roll out this training in all the schools, so to speak. So we are thinly spread. But now we also have beneath this program the option of doing train the trainer kind of a thing. And what we were targeting at, it was to target this unemployed youth, to train them to assist us to roll out this program. So when we, get this pull a plug kind of an approach from national and provincial department, then actually make everything fall flat. And the mind training program was not just only to address or assist the learners to achieve distinction. It was also to address the issue of bullying. As you all know, this attitude of bullying is the problem upstairs here. So it was meant to empower the learners who are bullying, because I mean, we know the root cause of it. It could be from home or from the environment, is to empower them to overcome that attitude, and also to empower the victims of bullying. Because if you are really being bullied at school, there is no way you can actually perform optimally, to a level of your all capacity. So we wanted to address that. And if you look in Gauteng, our MEC for education, Panyaza Lesufi, he's like now a firefighter. Every now and then, when there is a bullying there, he will rush. So the government's approach, it's very reactive. And our approach that we sold to them, it's proactive, because you go there, you train these learners, and they will be able to overcome that, and you'll give those who are actually the victims of that mental tenacity to be able to stand against that and perform very well at school. But look what's happening in Limpopo there. We've got a learner who committed suicide. And this is just one of the incidents. It's just a tip of an iceberg. So what about in school where now these things are not really being captured by the media? So this thing is really terrible. It's a pandemic in the school. So we really want to appeal to you, Chair. Please assist us to unlock the blockages that we experience in terms of bringing up this solution-based approaches.
So I will just hand over to my CEO. I think all the hands are down, to just give us an overview in terms of CYREC's approach to the problem. CEO, Advocate Aubrey.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yep, just in a nutshell, I've had the fellow colleagues' the submissions regarding what needs to happen, as well as I think it was the last question from one of the participants, just asking the CYREC, the institute, as to how it's going to assist in this particular regard when it comes to all these particular matters. Maybe let me just start by indicating that as CYREC, we've got a number of identified objectives, and these objectives are aligned mainly with the challenges that we have in the country. And as well, we tried to zoom specifically into entities that need to make it possible that our people's rights are achieved, because everything that we've been talking about here, it's about our people's human rights. So one, to start with, as CYREC will be zooming into the mandate as well as the governance within Chapter 9 institutions of our country, because those are the bodies that actually have to promote and protect the rights of our citizens. So when we talk about the right to education, we know we have to run quickly to the Human Rights Commission and engage around all these particular aspects that have been raised. You see, for example, I don't know whether it was Jamela who spoke about what I would term to be the cognitive ability of pupils. And she talked about the question of identity, which relates similarly to the second video that we saw earlier on. You see, all those particular aspects, they really relate to our language aspect. In order for people to unleash their potential, in order for people to unleash their cognitive ability, they have to use their languages. In that regard, we will be able to go somewhere. We will be able to help even the state itself when it comes to the question of unemployment, which is really a key issue that we are faced with as a state. Two, we are dealing with issues of technology and human rights. So those are some of the things that we'll be looking into as the institute, the issue of whistleblowers, the aspect of social security. So all these particular matters that have been brought to the fore are really covered within our mandate. If not, it's just really a question of contextualizing them accordingly within the objectives that we have already identified for ourselves. But critically, one can just upload all the submissions that have been made, specifically with regards to, I don't know who spoke about the aspect of constitutional imperatives. Someone made mention to us having to ensure that we go back to the Constitution, remind the state as to what it has to do, its obligations. So that's one of the aspects that relates to governance. Because here we are dealing with the issue of youth and governance. We are looking at it from an angle of the schools as well as the state. So when it comes to the state, one is really already made mention to the question of the cognitive ability, the use of languages. And, there's one example that one can give that our pupils, our students, for argument's sake, at universities, colleges, they go all out there, study for a particular program, for argument's sake, agriculture. But thereafter, the state does not really assist them to unleash their potential. The state does not really allow them to participate in the economy of their country through entrepreneurship angle that was referred to earlier on. You find some of them being employed as police officers, having studied agriculture. Those are the things that we need to look into as CIREC and say to the state, how do we ensure that we allow people to participate in the economy and unleash their potential? By so doing, we'll be holding the state accountable when it comes to Section 22 of the Constitution to say people have got the right to freedom of trade, occupation, and so forth. But that clause is extremely loaded in a sense that the state has got the responsibility to ensure that people are able to actualize what they have studied for or towards, as well as really to unleash that particular potential. Schools-wise, we are talking about representation in schools. We are talking about participatory involvement of our kids at schools. Issues of languages are very critical. That's the issue of diversity management that we need to look into. It has to start at that particular level, wherein our pupils at schools are given an opportunity to partake and input into the policies and codes of conduct of our institutions of learning at basic level. So these are things that we'll be looking into as CIREC to say, how do we engage the Department of Education? How do we engage the Association of School Governing Bodies around the question of creating that space for our pupils at schools to partake in decision making, as well as to look into the questions of identity and language that were spoken to earlier on, as well as the aspects of sport, which is very critical. And I think if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Mashele spoke about the preparatory phase at schools. This is just my own phraseology, but she was talking about the fact that given the observation as parents and similarly as teachers at schools that we have made regarding our kids and pupils, we should be able already to prepare our kids to say, we have observed the fact that our kids are not much more inclined to what I would term to be academic studies, but they are more inclined into technical, into artisan. What is it that we are going to do as CIREC about these particular aspects? Then is to engage once more the Department of Education to say, and its sister departments to say, how do we ensure that we really identify these particular potentials of our kids at that particular preparatory phase, and then align them accordingly without really reducing or giving a perception that their cognitive ability is lower than those of academics, but just appreciating the fact that we are a diverse society with different abilities and the potential professional capabilities that we can employ in order to take our country forward. So key to it is that our youth is really, really critical in this particular regard, and it is only them who can address these socioeconomic challenges or factors that we are facing as a country. So in a nutshell, sport, as it was said earlier on, entrepreneurship that goes with the right to trade and occupation and so forth. The question of diversity management, issues of identity, language, and so forth are very critical. So we need to really look into these particular aspects, and surely within CIREC and with the assistance of our participants and fellow colleagues, fellow citizens out there would really be able to reach a number of milestones that we are looking forward to. Thank you very much.
So yeah, thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you very much for attending, for spending your time in commemorating the youth of 1976, the 46th celebration with CIREC, as we are kickstarting what is an interesting journey, I think, for all of us, to hold all the institutions, would it be private, would it be public, you name them. We are going to be holding them responsible in terms of how they should be governing and wanting them to be accountable. And thank you very much for making this day a success. If there are no comments from the executive of CIREC, I will hand over to my chairperson, my chairman, Advocate Tsidiso Tipanyanese. Please usher us.
Yes. Thank you, Program Director, and also for the colleagues for being here with us again up until now. Let me just start with the easier ones about cooperation. We'll certainly be launching our website soon, as well as launching CIREC, and then where everything then will be out there. And of course, we are very keen on collaborating with anyone around our objectives, as well as the focus areas, which some of them have been outlined by our CEO today. So let me make that clear, and of course you are able to contact us, anytime to make those suggestions as to how we can collaborate in pursuit of our mandate. Now, on the closing remarks, then I just want to start by saying that Advocate Carter reminded us earlier on today that the Constitution basically reflects the will of our people. And that will, as we saw in 76, is really about having a responsive and accountable governance of both public and private institutions. But also, if you look at the preamble, also again, our people made it very clear that we do need to improve the quality of life for all citizens in this country, as well as free the potential of everyone. And I think this is what we'll be talking about today. And therefore, in this context, then 76 then is a reminder, of the impact of this potential once it is released. And unfortunately, as we were saying earlier on, that and sadly, 46 years later, things seem to be really getting worse in terms of the state of affairs of the youth in our country. And it's very clear, colleagues, that we cannot continue like this, where we are losing our young people to poverty, to violence, and to unemployment. And yet, on the other hand, we cannot progress as a country without the involvement of the youth, without proper investment of the youth. And therefore, for us, this day is very important in that sense that we really need to go back to the drawing board and find ways in which we could really get our youth to get more involved. I was looking at the stats now. The IC said in 2019, there was a 47% decrease of youth voter turnout. And we know that, we have more than, 7 million people in our country not voting. And therefore, you could imagine if the youth were also participating more actively in matters of governance, it will really change the political landscape. So we really need to work very hard as CIREC, as partners, to ensure that this really happens in a much more effective manner. And therefore, we really need your support for us to work together to ensure that we do help our young people in various ways to feel that they're part of us, and they have a role and a role to play in building our country. And therefore, we will, as CIREC, then really go out to see what we can do. And therefore, one of the programs we'll be identifying as CIREC is to see how we can get more involved in issues of youth and help the youth, to unleash this potential, so that at least our country could be a much better country than it is today, and that we could see many young people getting less involved in issues of crime. We have very high levels of crime in our country, gender-based violence, violence in schools, and largely the youth are also involved. If you look at the crime stats, you realize that actually 60% of our crimes are caused by young people, as well as the majority of victims of crime in our country are also young people. And really, this is just a waste of resources, resources which we need to develop our country, to address issues of poverty, unemployment, and so forth. So we really glad, we are happy that everybody turned up today for this important session for us. It's an entry one, it's a beginning for us. We'll make a few mistakes, but with time, we'll definitely get better and better. That we guarantee. So I really want to thank everybody. I want to thank our program director for steering the ship, as well as our colleagues in the background, IT, the videos and everything else, as well, of course, our CEO and our CFO for putting this event together at a very, very short notice. We only thought of this thing last week Sunday, and I didn't think it would happen. But anyway, colleagues persisted, and here we are. So I really thank everybody for coming to be with us, and also take this journey with us going forward to ensure that there will be indeed a responsive and accountable governance in our country, at schools, in our private sectors, and everywhere else, so that we can then unleash the potential of all our people to make this country really great. South Africa is a very rich country, and we can therefore not afford to have many people in our country going to bed without food.